Ned was the last to leave the crypt. The torch in his hand hissed, smoke curling through the still cold air as it climbed the rough-cut steps toward daylight. Winterfell's lower corridors always tasted of stone dust and damp earth, but this morning a harsher tang clung to them, the iron smell of a promise broken and reborn. In the cavern behind him, Lyanna's statue watched in silence, the stone petals of her winter rose drifting forever across her lap. Their father's words echoed up the stairwell, "Promise me, Ned." Yet for the first time since the Tower of Joy they no longer scraped like a dagger at his conscience. Because the promise was kept, though not in the way Lyanna had feared. Wrapped in the crook of Ned's left arm slept a child barely 4 moons old, his dark lashes trembling against skin, just beginning to pink with life beyond fever. He was swaddled in a crimson silk edged in black, the last scrap of the blanket Ned had torn from the bed where Lyanna died. The colors were those of a dragon, yet here in Winterfell, the babe drew breath beneath a dire wolf's roof. He would draw many more if Ned Stark's will held. Outside, dawn broke pale across the bailey. Frost rimed the yard, and the breath of stable boys and sentries plumed in the chill. Ned crossed the hard ground toward the great keep. A lone raven circled overhead, its croak loud in the morning hush, as though the old gods themselves remarked upon the small bundle cradled against his breast. Catelyn waited in the doorway. Her auburn hair spilled from the hood of a gray cloak, copper catching the early light. She had not slept. He saw it in the pinch of her mouth, the bruised crescents under each eye. When he stopped before her, she said nothing at first, only studied the child, her gaze moving from downy hair to the oddly solemn crease between miniature brows. "Is this the reason you rode south in such haste?" Her voice was tight, scarce above a whisper. Ned could have lied. The words were there, the excuse practiced a dozen times since dawn. But Lyanna's last plea thundered beneath his ribs. "Promise me. Promise me." He could not build this boy's life on a foundation of falsehoods, not if there remained another path. "He is the reason," Ned answered, keeping his voice steady though his heart shook like a leaf. "And more. Come inside, Cat. Robb will wake soon. We must speak before the children rise." They met in the solar. A thin fire wavered in the hearth, more smoke than flame. Fatigued though she was, Catelyn Stark poured mulled wine for them both. The cup trembled when she set it between Ned's hands. "He looks tully enough," she said at length, glancing toward the cradle Ned had carried from the storeroom. The same cradle Robb had slept in his first days. Dark hair, aye, but the eyes. "Violet," Ned supplied. "Or they will be, when their color settles." Lyanna's son by Rhaegar Targaryen. The cup slipped in Catelyn's grasp. Spiced wine splashed across the table. She stared at Ned as if another ghost had risen from the crypt. "Targaryen? His name is Aegon. Aegon of House Targaryen. The last the South will accept as true-born." Ned's fingers tightened about the cup until warmth seeped into cold knuckles. "Lyanna made me swear to protect him, to keep him from Robert's wrath. Robert would kill an infant. Robert, drunk on vengeance and grief, would scorch kingdoms to ashes for less." Ned heard his friends roar in memory. "Targaryen babes, dragon spawn, rip them out root and stem." And his stomach turned. If he knew the child lived, he would never see a babe. Only Rhaegar's blood. Catelyn pressed a hand to her lips. The hearth fire popped. Resin sparked like embers of an old battle reigniting. She crossed to the cradle, leaned over its rim. Little Aegon stirred, one tiny fist escaping the blanket. Catelyn touched a finger to his palm. Instinct closed his hand about hers. Tears slipped silent down her cheeks. "In the gods' eyes," she murmured, "he's innocent." "In every eye," Ned said. "Innocent and hunted." He met her gaze. "I would raise him here safe as Jon Stark, my acknowledged ward, but not my bastard. Yet even that lie carries poison. When he comes of age, he must know who he is. The realm must know, or all I do now is for nothing." "That's the one." Catelyn's shoulders squared, as though bracing against Winterfell's winds. Then we raise him, not as your bastard, nor as a hidden prince, but as kin, as our son's foster brother and the North's honored ward. Her voice faltered. Still, she forced the words. So long as the day arrives when secrets end. Ned's throat closed around sudden gratitude. He bent, brushed his lips to her hair. It will. On my honor. The years that followed rooted the promise in Winterfell's gray stone like a sapling seeking sun between high walls. Young. For the name proved the simplest veil, grew lean and quick, with a swordsman's poise even in play. Where Robb rushed headlong, Jon considered, turning puzzles over the way masters turn pages. Bran worshipped Robb's valor but copied Jon's footwork, his calm. Even Sansa, who dreamt of songs and sweet summer courts, allowed Jon to braid ribbons into her hair when he fetched them untangled from her chest. Arya, wild from the cradle, shadowed him through halls and courtyards, echoing his every step. Catelyn kept her promise. She treated the boy with stern kindness, though grief glimmered sometimes in her eyes when Violet met hers across the high table. In those moments she would rise, claiming some duty, and pace the yard until the ache settled. Ned watched but did not intrude. Some wounds must mend without fresh probing. Maester Luwin alone shared the truth entire. He prepared ledgers recording Jon's tutoring beneath the alias J rivers, a jest they kept between them, for the North had no rivers in the bastard sense. Yet each lesson in reading, sums, and history bore a second tale stitched beneath the first. The lore of old Valyria, the dragon lords and the Targaryen kings. Jon absorbed it all with a hunger that startled Luwin, an appetite perhaps born of blood calling to blood. On Jon's 14th name day, Ned brought him to the Godswood beneath moonlight. Snow feathered the ancient weirwood's branches, the red leaves black in darkness. They knelt by the still pool where the heart tree's face wept sap. Ned's breath clouded between them. "You have always known I am not your father," he began. Jon's gaze held his, unflinching. "I know you are my lord, whatever else. I am your uncle, by marriage of blood. Your mother was my sister Lyanna, stolen by Prince Rhaegar, yet not unwilling, though the realm believes otherwise. Rhaegar wed her in secret, setting aside the Dornish princess who bore him 2 children. Jon's brows knit. Then Robert's rebellion. "A song of broken vows and vengeance," Ned said softly. Robert loved Lyanna. He would have forgiven her anything save loving another. When Rhaegar fell on the trident, Robert slew him thinking Lyanna dishonored. "My sister died bearing you, and with her last breath she begged I shield you from the king she once called friend." Menditor. Jon's face, pale in starlight, seemed carved from ice. "Why tell me now?" "Because a boy turned squire, a squire may someday bear a crown heavier than any helm. You must be forged honest. I will not let you learn from strangers who might twist truth for their ends." Ned reached into his cloak, drew forth a small bundle of smoked leather. Within lay the pommel of a dagger, dark hilt, pale dragonbone grip. "The king's justice may still seek you. Yet the realm crumbles. Robert drinks and hunts while Lannisters grow bold, Greyjoys rebellious. If the realm falls, who rises?" "Nectarsarum. Stannis," Jon answered by rote. "Renly perhaps, or Joffrey. None fit, and all contested. But you, Aegon of the blood of kings, could mend rent banners if the time called." Jon swallowed. "I swore to Robb I would be his man, to Winterfell and the North." "And so you are," Ned said. "A Stark in all but name. The North would follow you as they once followed Robb's grandsire, the young dragon, to restore justice. Should I fall, Jon, promise me you will act not for crowns but for peace." "Now, Tim." Jon closed his fingers around the dagger hilt. It rested against his palm like a living thing. "I promise." The weirwood's face watched, its red eyes bleeding sap, as though sealing vow to memory. The summons from King's Landing arrived before dawn 2 years later, borne by a raven with royal ribbon wound round its leg. Jon and Robb were sparring in the yard, steel clanging, breath fogging the crisp air, when Maester Luwin's cry drew everyone to the great hall. The parchment bore King Robert's own signature, though the pen stroke wavered like a man had been half drunk or half sleepless. Ned read in silence, jaw set so hard Catelyn feared his teeth would shatter. Robert commanded Lord Eddard to bring his ward Jon Snow to court, there to foster under the king's own roof in honor of old friendship, and to heal old wounds. On its surface, the invitation glittered, a great honor for a northern ward. But the seal, a crowned stag couchant over a dragon's skull, dripped venom. Cersei's doing, no doubt, or Littlefinger's. Someone in the capital had learned enough to set bait. That night Ned paced the ramparts beneath a moon 3/4 full. Jon found him there, silent as falling snow. "You mean to refuse?" Ned turned. "I mean to protect you. By hiding me forever. You told me a crown can be shield or shackle. If the king calls, I must answer." Jon's breath steamed white. "Besides, the court is the forge where I learn my enemies." He spoke with a calm older than his years. Ned studied the boy. No, the young man. And saw Lyanna's stubborn pride in the tilt of his chin, Rhaegar's quiet gravity in his eyes. "Very well," Ned conceded. "We ride at first thaw. But heed me. Trust no Lannister smile, no Varys whisper, and above all no cup pressed by a stranger's hand. Court is a pit of vipers." Jon's mouth curved wryly. "Then I must grow fangs." King's Landing stank of tanner's urine, horse dung, and warm brine carried on a breathless spring breeze. The Red Keep loomed above the muddled reek, its walls red as dried blood. Within those walls the game sharpened its teeth. Robert Baratheon greeted them in the throne room, though greeting proved a generous word. The king's eyes, once sky-bright, looked dulled by wine and sorrow. His once mighty frame had blurred into flesh too fond of feasting. Yet when he beheld Jon, something kindled, not the hatred Ned had feared, nor simple curiosity, but wonder marred by grief. "He has her eyes," Robert whispered as Jon knelt. The court fell silent. Queen Cersei sat stiff upon the Iron Throne's foot, her painted smile brittle as sugar icing. Beside her, Joffrey watched the newcomer like a hawk plaguing a nestling. Ned stepped forward. "My ward, Jon Stark of Winterfell." Don raised his head. Violet irises met green Lannister jade, Baratheon blue, Tyrell amber, Dornish brown dada. Cersei's fingers whitened where they gripped the lion-headed armrest. Varys the spider tilted his bald head, eyes half-lidded. Petyr Baelish smiled the smile of a man tallying debts newly owed. "Stark, aye," Robert murmured. "And you will foster here, learn knighthood from Barristan Selmy and Renly both." Cersei's painted nails tapped iron. "His blood is northern, knights are Southron conceits. Perhaps the wall would better suit." "The wall needs men of honor," Jon answered calmly. "But the realm needs honorable men, too." A ripple traveled the throne room. Soft laughter from Renly, a cough from Pycelle. Cersei's lips thinned. Joffrey's hand drifted to the hilt of a dagger at his belt. Robert barked a laugh. "Well said. Gods, Ned, the boy speaks with more sense than half my counsel." He rose, laboriously, and clapped Jon's shoulder. "You'll serve as cupbearer first, then squire. Learn the court's every stink. When you've had your fill, you'll know whether you'll lead men or flee them." That night, in the chambers allotted to the Stark party, Ned barred the doors and spoke low. "He saw Lyanna in you. Be wary. Robert loved her once, but memory may sour." I felt no hate. Jon unlaced traveling leathers, his fingers deft from years of Winterfell's hunts. "Only regret. Regret ferments into rage when stirred," Catelyn warned. She had come south with him despite misgivings. Now her gaze prowled the corners as though hunting invisible foes. "The queen will strike if she senses a threat to her cubs. What threat am I, if none know my name?" Ned laid a hand on Jon's shoulder. "Secrets wield their own blades, my boy. The sharper for being hidden." Court life proved a testing ground of velvet lies and poisoned courtesies. Jon bore the humiliation of pouring wine for men who whispered dragon spawn behind gloved hands. He learned to read the language of glances across the small council table. How Pycelle exaggerated a cough when truth approached. How Littlefinger's eyes flicked to every purse in the room. He sparred with Lannister guards, broke fast with Renly and his Tyrell shadow Loras, and hunted boar with the king, who in rare sober moods spoke of Lyanna with a pain that turned him stranger than drink ever did. On one such hunt, Robert rested beneath a willow by a slow river. Jon knelt to gut a hare he had shot earlier, blood hot on his marrow knife. The king watched, saying nothing until the hare's pelt peeled away. "She would have liked you." Jon rinsed his hands in the river. "My mother?" Robert nodded once. Lyanna was half wolf, half storm. Fierce. Too fierce for dragon fire. His gaze drifted across the water reeds. "I slew Rhaegar for stealing her. Yet perhaps she was never mine to keep." Jon's heart hammered, though his voice stayed even. "My lord king, I am but a ward. I—" Robert's eyes returned to him, sharp now. "But which house claims you?" Your looks set rumor racing. "If you be Targaryen by blood, my oaths demand I end you." Jon met that gaze with all the steadiness Winterfell's snows had forged in him. "I am your friend's son in all but name, and your subject either way." He offered the king the hair. "Take what vengeance you will." Robert stared at the carcass, then barked laughter raw as gravel. "Seven hells, you have balls. Rise, boy. My ghosts won't be sated by another child's blood." Yet the encounter reached ears eager for discord. When next Jon served the small council, Cersei's emerald gaze sliced him from crown to heel. That night, an assassin with silent shoes crept toward his pallet in the squire's alcove, only to find a dire wolf with eyes like molten gold standing guard. Ghost's snarl woke the wing, and the would-be killer fled, severing a tapestry before disappearing through a window 3 stories above the cliff path. Littlefinger arrived minutes later, half-dressed with guards in tow. "So unfortunate," he tutted, surveying the claw-torn floor. "Enemies in strange places, young Stark. Best sleep with one eye open." Jon wiped blood from Ghost's muzzle. "And whose word carries strange men through royal corridors?" Littlefinger's smile thinned. "This is King's Landing. All men may be bought." Jon met his gaze. "But not all men sell." Whispers multiplied. One spoke of silver hair cropped short beneath a squire's helm. Another of a dragon's song heard beneath the Tower of the Hand at midnight. Ned wrote north for more men. Catelyn counted coin for sellswords loyal by gold, though not by blood. Then came the royal joust, to mark Joffrey's 13th name day. The lists gleamed beneath banners blazing sunbright. Lannister crimson, Tyrell rose, Baratheon gold, Martell orange and red, stag and lion and flower, all arrayed beneath a sky the color of steel. Jon stood with the knights, his wooden practice sword sheathed beside a borrowed helm. He had refused armor. He would ride only the tilt, a token pass. Yet from the stands, Cersei watched him, as though each tilt might bear hidden edges. Sir Jaime Lannister unhorsed 3 challengers, and saluted his sister. Sir Loras wore a plume of golden roses, drew cheers by dropping his lance mid-sprint, and vaulting to cut a skillful flourish before Renly's dais. When Jon's turn came, he guided a grey courser into position opposite Sir Meryn Trant. The Kingsguard knight outweighed him by 2 stone, and wore plate that glimmered like icicles in dusk light. The horns sounded. Jon leaned low, lance couched. The world narrowed to thunder of hooves, and the blur of white cloak barreling toward him. He met the blow square, the impact ripping splinters through sky. Sir Meryn's lance cracked across Jon's pauldron, numbing his arm, but Jon's own struck true, a lightning bolt to the center chest. Trant rocked back, slipped, and tumbled from his charger into sawdust. The yard erupted. Cersei rose from her throne, face white. Jaime's gloved hands closed on the balustrade. Robert, half drunk, roared approval as if Rhaegar had fallen again upon the trident. That night, in a half-lit solar, Varys appeared like a wraith. He bowed to Ned, to Catelyn, and finally to Jon, hands open and empty. "The realm knows the scent of dragon blood," he murmured. "You cannot mask it forever." The queen sharpens daggers both steel and word. She will not allow a rival for her cub. "I seek no crown," Jon said. "Crowns seek those who deny them." Varys' smile was sad. You have two choices. Reveal your name in the light of day, or let the night swallow you before others decide. Ned bristled. Threats? Warnings, my lord. The realm balances on a sword's edge. The eunuch's eyes gleamed. Dragons may yet be reborn and winter marches. Best choose which danger you will face first. Robert died 3 weeks later, gored by a boar during a hunt he insisted upon after a quarrel with the queen. Some whispered Cersei's sweetened wine slowed his reflexes. Others swore Joan's likeness to Lyanna had driven Robert to drink beyond prudence. The boar's tusk gutted him. He lingered 2 days, raving of blue roses and bloody crowns, before smoke from Cersei's scented brazier stilled his heart. The capital convulsed. Queen Regent Cersei produced a will proclaiming Joffrey heir, witnessed only by Pycelle and a half-blind Septon. Renly vanished in the night, riding for Highgarden with Loras and a column of Tyrell spears. Stannis Baratheon sailed from Dragonstone, his ravens crying treason. In the Tower of the Hand, Ned Stark called his sons and his foster son to council. There, at last, he placed Rhaegar's dragon-bone dagger upon the table and bid Jon speak. When dawn rose, the banners streaming from the red keep bore not stag nor lion, but direwolf quartered with 3-headed dragon. Jon Snow, named Aegon Targaryen, of houses Targaryen and Stark, claimed the throne by right of blood and by consent of the North, the Riverlands, and in a stunning surprise brokered by Catelyn, the Vale, whose young Lord Arryn saw in Ned Stark the father he had lost. Joffrey screamed treason from the Iron Throne. Jaime's sword cleared its scabbard. But the gold cloaks Ned had subtly replaced with Northmen barred their path. Within hours Cersei found doors locked against her, halls lined with men whose cloaks bore neither crimson nor gold, but the gray and white of House Stark. Outside, crowds gathered below the walls, catching rumors blown like embers on the wind. A prince hidden since Robert's rebellion, a dragon wolf raised in northern snow. The love of Rhaegar and Lyanna proved in flesh. Some spat at the notion of a Targaryen return. Others knelt when Jon rode through the gates on a white horse, unsmiling but unafraid. In the throne room, amid shattered loyalties and flickering torchlight, Jon climbed the steps not to sit but to stand before the Iron Throne. He looked out upon lords and small folk alike and spoke. I do not seek this chair for love of power. My mother died for love. My father died for honor. From them I learned that crowns weigh heavier than any mail. His voice carried across vaulting stone. Yet the realm bleeds. The dead march in the north. Dragons stir across the sea. We will face these perils together or perish piecemeal. Today I claim my name so that tomorrow we may stand united. He drew the dagger from his belt, dragonbone and steel shining beneath torchfire, and scored his palm, crimson welling bright. Ned stepped beside him, sliced his own hand with Ice's smaller sibling he carried always. They clasped forearms, blood mingling. House Stark stands with its king, Ned proclaimed. One by one, lords knelt. The Vale's bronze, Jon Royce. Edmure Tully of River Run. Even Sir Barristan Selmy, Kingsguard legend, dropped to one knee and bowed his silver head. But others slipped away. Cersei before chains could close, Varys into secret tunnels, Littlefinger with a smirk and a purse full of debts unpaid. War brewed beyond the city walls and within them. Winterfell's ravens flew with news of Jon's coronation, and the north answered. Columns of mail-clad spearmen marched south, banners snapping. At Moat Cailin, Jon met them, Robb commanding the van, Grey Wind at his flank. They embraced as brothers reunited after long separation. The realm is on fire, Robb said, eyes alight, but will be the river that quenches it. Behind them Arya practiced with needle. Bran studied maps. Rickon clutched Shaggy Dog's fur. Sansa rode with a retinue of northern ladies sworn to the new queen, for Jon, too wary of queenship snares, had named her hand and Lady Regent in the capital during his campaign, a matchless honor that left the girl breathless. As armies wheeled and ravens screamed, Jon marched for Storm's End, intent on bringing Stannis to council, or to heel. Yet at Bitterbridge a new banner appeared upon the horizon. Black and red, the dragon of Aegon, the Conqueror reborn, but marked also by a blazing comet tail. Daenerys Stormborn had crossed the narrow sea with 3 living dragons circling her fleet. 2 Targaryens claim 1 crown, Sir Davos Seaworth warned in parley. Not so, Jon replied. One seeks to rule, the other to save. Atop a wind-swept hill beneath crackling stars, Jon met Daenerys Stark. Ghost walked at his knee. Drogon circled overhead, a shadow blotting constellations. Violet met Violet across the uncertain space of kin unacquainted. They spoke of fathers who died, of mothers who sacrificed, of kingdoms lost to madness and gained through mercy. When dawn flushed the sky, they stood side by side. We share blood, Jon said. And purpose, Daenerys answered. Together they turned toward the north, where reports of dead men walking multiplied. And behind them, lords uneasy with 2 dragons, one flesh, one winged, murmured of ancient prophecy. Snow fell early that year. White flakes drifted into King's Landing like quiet omens. In the throne room, Sansa Stark sat the Iron Throne in her brother's stead, parchment stacked before her. Grain levies, refugees crowding the city gates, embassies from Dorne and the Reach. Outside, gold cloaks drilled with umber sergeants, learning new oaths. She lifted quill, signed each decree with a flowing wolf sigil beside a dragon's flame. Then she rose, skirts whispering across cold iron, and gazed out the window toward the distant north. Winter had come, and with it a king raised by honor and fire both. Whether the realm would endure that fire, or be forged anew, lay in the hands of a boy who bore 2 names, each heavy as a sword. Beyond the wall, something ancient stirred, smelling the mingled blood of wolf and dragon, and it quickened its pace toward the realms of men. The Game of Thrones was ended. The war for all dawns had begun. Moonlight silvered the courtyard of Winterfell, turning the new-fallen snow into an ocean of cold fire. Jon watched the shapes of men laboring below. Smiths hammering dragonglass into arrowheads, builders hoisting fresh timbers to strengthen the walls, boys running messages through drifts that rose past their knees. Beside him, Daenerys pressed a gloved hand to the stone parapet, her breath escaping in soft plumes. Though a southern wind rattled her silver-gold hair against the hood of her cloak, she showed no sign of chill. Her eyes never left the workers whose lives now rested on the partnership, struck atop that hill at Bitterbridge. Their hope feels heavier than the crown, she murmured. Jon flexed fingers, still scabbed from sparring. Hope is a burden only if we let it crush us. Better to wield it like a torch. Then, we must keep it burning. She nodded toward the yard, where Arya drilled a knot of lordlings in spear work. No master-at-arms had dared attempt at their age. Your sister turns doubt to discipline. Arya turns everything into a fight, Jon said, the corner of his mouth lifting despite the weight on his shoulders. But tonight even she will rest. The lords gather in the hall. We cannot keep them waiting forever. They descended the steps together, their cloaks, one direwolf gray, one dragon black, streaming side by side. In the great hall, torches blazed in iron brackets, staining rafters with pitchy smoke. Around the long stone hearth sat a knot of lords whose banners had not flown together since Aegon the Conqueror's field of fire. Karstark beside Tarly, Mormont by Florent, Davos Seaworth, sharing bread with bronze Jon Royce. At the high table, Sansa rose as they entered, her smile composed, but her eyes soft, with the relief of a sister, seeing her brother return alive. Jon took the dais. We are gathered to plan a war that makes liars of every song, he began without preamble. Cersei Lannister mustered the remnants of the Crownlands at Harrenhal. Stannis fortifies Storm's End, and Euron Greyjoy harrows the western coasts. Yet none of them matters if we lose the north, the Dead March. We have weeks, not moons. And what is a week to a corpse? Growled Lyanna Mormont from her place atop stacked cushions. We fight now. To fight we must first stand upon the same ground, Davos said in his sailor's rasp. Dragonglass comes from Dragonstone. Steel from every forge still breathing. Food from the Reach. All must reach the north before the snows close the roads. Mendiceau. Tarly's broad shoulders stiffened. The Reach feeds half the realm. We'll send grain by ship to White Harbor, Wagon trains through the King's Road, if the king keeps it clear. Renly Squire Parman Crane had ridden north bearing letters sealed in Staghorn, pledging Highgarden's stores in exchange for peace with Stannis. That bargain lay silent on the table like a coiled adder. Jon met each Reachman's gaze in turn. My sister Sansa governs King's Landing in my stead. She will order the gold cloaks to patrol the King's Road. Any lord hindering grain will answer to the Iron Throne. Master. A few men shifted at that, knowing Cersei still breathed somewhere, sharp as frost. But none challenged aloud. They had seen dragons circling Winterfell's skies. Drogon, a thunderhead, Rhaegal and Viserion, screaming flame that melted snow in sheets from the towers. Daenerys stepped forward. Dragons alone cannot win this war. They burn, the others do not. But dragonfire on dragonglass, that we have yet to test. She produced a thin shard of black glass, knapped to a razor point. My smiths shaped this spearhead. Tomorrow we ride to a frozen lake east of the wall. A small host, no more than 50, will draw out the dead. Drogon will breathe upon the lake. Our archers will loose these shafts. If whites fall and stay fallen, we have our weapon. If not, our bones will warn Jon's grandchildren, Tormund Giantsbane finished, lifting a tankard and draining it in one pull. The Free Folk chief sat beside Bran's wheeled chair like a wolfhound beside a child king. His ruddy beard dripped ale when he grinned. Better a bold death than shivering behind stone till the snow eats us. Bran's clouded gaze passed over the map spread before him, pupils dilating until only a rim of crystal gray remained. They come faster than we wish, he murmured, voice distant. I see their footprints filling with blue light. The Night King hunts broken places. Last hearth abandons its ramparts. Carhold's hearthfire is cold. He blinked and became a boy again. We ride by dawn, or we ride too late. A hush settled, thin as hoarfrost. Jon closed the meeting with a nod. Dawn, then. Rest while you can. Then Turan. Ghosts paced the corridor outside Jon's chamber as the castle fell into uneasy silence. Within, Daenerys warmed her hands above a brazier. Jon trimmed the edge of his beard with his dagger. The ritual of steel steadying a mind crowded by prophecy and logistics. When he turned, she said, I grew up dreaming of Westeros. Never did those dreams smell of pitch and fear. Dreams never do. He slid the dagger home. You once believed the Iron Throne your destiny. It may yet be, she allowed, but not if winter wins. Would you still stand beside me when the snows melt? No. If either of us stands at all. He sat on the low bench, yanking riding boots free so his feet could feel Winterfell's cold stone. We were born of a song that ended in sorrow. Yet standing here, I almost believe we can finish it on a higher note. She knelt before him, easing the boot from his grasp. Not almost. Her fingers laced his. Believe. He did, at least for the space of a heartbeat. They rode as pale light broke across a sky rubbed raw by ice. Jon led the vanguard. Tormund, Jorah Mormont, Beric Dondarrion with his flaming longsword Arya on a dappled mare, and Gendry hefting the great warhammer Davos had fished from blacksmith forges below Winterfell. Behind them came rows of spearmen under House Manderly's trident banner, and free folk archers wearing cloaks sewn of direwolf pelts and seal hide. The most fragile burden traveled highest. Bran lashed a Hodor's rebuilt wicker seat atop a wagon lined with rabbit fur. His sight ranged far ahead, warning of movement across frozen rivers and wind-scoured valleys. At the wall's breach where Eastwatch had once stood, Daenerys circled on Drogon, while Rhaegal and Viserion glided sentinel wings down the coast. They smelled the sea and something fouler, rot borne on a wind that cut skin like flint. Jon dismounted on the shattered ice ramp, feeling the churn of horses beneath him, and lifted his hood. It ends where it began, Beric muttered, flame licking his steel. In blood and fire Jorah's eyes lingered on Daenerys' silhouette overhead, with an ache that had never fully healed. They crossed the ghost of the wall into lands Bran named in droning whispers, the haunted forest, the gorge, the milkwater frozen solid. At midday they found the first white, a hunter stiff with frost, antlers crusted in his ruined pack. When Jon slit its spine with Longclaw, blue light leaked like smoke from a brazier, then guttered. The corpse lay still. Fresh, Arya noted, crouching. Her breath puffed white. Doubts. Jon nodded. We bait the main host tonight. By dusk they reached the lake, still as glass beneath a skin of hoarfrost. Tormund hacked a hole near shore. Water glistened ink-black below. Jon signaled, and the soldiers fell back in a crescent, leaving only him, Daenerys, and 20 archers upon a hummock rimed in starlight. Drums of ice echoed across the flat wilderness. The dead arrived in silence, ranks and ranks unfolding from cedar groves. Armored wights bearing pelts stiff with rime, children's bones rattling in doll-sized mail, the skeletal remains of giant mastodons dragging tusks thicker than a man's waist. At their center rode the Night King on an undead elk, whose breath steamed blue. Daenerys lifted a horn to her lips. Drogon answered, swooping low. Rhaegal and Viserion fanned wider. As their shadows crossed the lake, Jon's archers knocked and drew. The Night King raised an arm, and the lake began to crack, not beneath dragon flame, but beneath dead weight. Too many bodies for thin ice. Jon's realization came a breath too late. The Night King meant not to cross, but to trap. Back! Jon shouted, but the archers were already scattering. Wights poured onto the frozen lake. Ice splintered, devouring them in shrieking cavalcades, yet those behind kept coming, forging a bridge of bodies whose frozen limbs locked into a grisly causeway. Drogon unleashed flame. Fire sheeted across the corpses, turning ice to geysers, but the Night King strode unharmed, blue skin untouched. Jon heard Bran's voice in his mind, a whisper more felt than heard. He sees through every eye you slay. The Night King's power multiplied with each fallen corpse. Burn them, and the ashes rose. Jon vaulted from hummock to ice, sprinting toward the Night King. The chill cut his lungs, but Longclaw sang in his hand, Valyrian steel hungry. Behind him, Arya raced like a shadow. Sansa would skin us both, Jon thought distantly, then had no more room to think. The Night King's spear carved a white arc through the darkness. Jon ducked. Ice chipped his cheek. Arya leapt, needle stabbing at pale throat, but the spear's haft backhanded her hard across the ribs, hurling her into a drift. Storm wind howled. Wolves bayed. Beric's sword burned like sunrise before being quenched in the Night King's clenched fist. The flame died. Beric fell. Daenerys landed Drogon so close the wind of his wings nearly knocked Jon to his knees. She called to him, but Jon was already charging again. Ghost lunged at the elk, tearing rotten flesh from bone. The beast collapsed. Jon hammered Longclaw down. Valyrian steel bit deep. The Night King staggered, yet did not fall. A second spear, formed of rippling ice, appeared in his free hand. With no time to dodge, Jon raised Longclaw to parry, and the spear burst into 1,000 shards before it struck, splintered by Drogon's tail whipping across the gap. The Night King reeled. Jon lunged once more, aiming for the same wound, and Longclaw sank to the hilt, black metal meeting frozen heart. The Night King screamed soundlessly. Blue light spilled from his chest, flooding cracks in the ice, climbing Ghost's white fur, pouring up Drogon's scales like quicksilver. Jon wrenched the blade free exactly as the dead king exploded, not in flame, not in ash, but in a blizzard of snow too bright to gaze upon. When the white fury faded, no corpse remained, only ragged piles of armor spilling gemstones of blue ice that melted as the living watched. Across the plain, every wight folded where it stood, marionettes with snipped strings. Arya coughed blood, then laughed. Well struck, brother. Jon sank to his knees, the weight of the moment crashing through him, heavier than any sword. Ghost pushed his snout beneath Jon's elbow. Drogon roared to the stars, the sound echoing so far, it seemed that the sky itself answered. They cremated Beric on the lakeshore, his last life, finally spent. Jon spoke the words the Red Priestess had once taught him. Night gathers, and now my watch has ended. Tormund cried more fiercely than any southern knight for the man who had died again and again for fires he barely understood. When the flames soared high, Bran whispered the first clean thought they had heard from him in moons. He was the last whose thread returned again and again. The weave is set. Jorah lifted his knuckles from the snow. Then winter is ended. Winter never ends, Bran replied. Only the dead end. For now. Those words carried south on raven wings to every holdfast. At King's Landing, Sansa received the scroll in the throne room. She read it 3 times before daring to feel the strength seep from her knees. Then she summoned Grand Maester Samwell. Newly appointed after Pycelle's death from chill and fright, the Night Golden Company banners had appeared on the horizon. The Reach's grain held the city fed, Dornish spears lined the walls, yet the Golden Company threatened from the west, halfway to the city. Sansa passed Sam the scroll. Tell the lords, the north rides home. We may now turn all swords upon Cersei. Sam's cheeks reddened above his trimmed beard. I never prayed for war, my queen. But, for this, I will. He hurried off, robes fluttering. Sansa closed her eyes. She pictured Jon alive, Daenerys unburnt, Arya's grin. Then she girded herself in queenly calm and ordered her council to convene. Jon and Daenerys marched south with 20,000 Northmen, 10,000 free folk, and dragons wheeling above the column. Highgarden sent riders to proclaim their loyalty. Dorne's princes pledged warriors eager to spill Lannister blood for Elia Martell's long-past murder. Even the Ironborn bent knee, save Euron, who held pike with black sails and darker rumors of sorcery. At Moat Cailin, they found Theon Greyjoy waiting in chains, delivered by Yara. Theon knelt before Jon, weeping apologies until Jon hauled him upright. Justice waits until war is done, he said, recalling Ned's lesson. When you take a man's head, look him in the eye. Theon rode with the baggage train after that, a living reminder of debts yet owed. At Harrenhal's broken towers, they met fires burning under Lannister banners. Jaime led the defense but unbarred the gates at dawn, offering his sword. I fought for a king who threatened to burn us all, he told Jon on the drawbridge, white book tucked beneath his arm. I will not stand for another who burns souls with grief. He presented Cersei's last crown, gold twisted into lion's mane, dented where rage had flung it against stone. Jaime told them Cersei fled to Casterly Rock, gathering what gold remained after the Tyrell vaults ran empty. She says the lion does not yield to wolves or dragons. She says she will die a queen. She may die whatever she names herself, Daenerys answered. She will still die. But when the host reached the rock, they found only empty halls stripped of treasure. Cersei had sailed with Euron hours earlier, carrying the Lion's Guard and Qyburn's dark wagons. In her chambers lay a single parchment. You are always Rhaegar's shadow, Jon Snow. May it fall upon you forever. Below, a smear of crimson lipstick in the shape of a lion's paw. Daenerys crushed it in gloved fingers. We chase phantoms while she barters with monsters. Tyrion, come at last from Pentos with Varys intelligence, grimaced. My sister barters only with herself. Euron will turn pirate the instant coin is exchanged. The more pressing serpent coils in King's Landing. The Golden Company has accepted her contract in name, but lingers outside the city, waiting to see which banner blooms brightest. Then, Jon called a war council in a ruined banquet hall, where lions carved from basalt bowed their heads in penance. There he unfolded Samwell's latest raven, grain stores low, city restless, but walls bristling with scorpions built to pierce dragonhide. Even Drogon could fall to 50 bolts at once. Daenerys paced. A siege starves small folk first. The people would love me as a liberator, if they lived to see liberation. Never. Tyrion twirled his wine cup. Then do not besiege. Persuade. You have Bran Stark, now hailed as the Greenseer King. Let him speak to the hearts of folk as he speaks to wolves in the wood. Bran's wheelchair was rolled onto the dais. He listened like a statue. When asked, he merely said, We need only open one gate, not tear down all walls. And how will we do that? Davos asked. Undermine the one thing Cersei trusts. Bran's gaze fixed on Jaime. Her brother. Jaime's eyes widened, though he did not flinch. If I ride to her, she'll loose arrows before the portcullis lifts. She will loose them anyway, Bran replied. But you wear your cloak stripped of gold now. Wear white instead. He reached to the table, taking the white book Jaime had carried for safekeeping, and placed it before the knight. Add the last page yourself. Tyrion's breath caught. The King's Guard. A king needs guards, Bran said. And a sister needs to see what her brother has become. Jaime spent that night beneath a tallow candle, quill scratching. At dawn, dressed in plain mail beneath a bleached cloak sewn hastily of sail canvas, he rode alone for King's Landing, leaving behind the army that would follow at a day's distance. The gates of the capital swung wide at sunset, lanterns flickering like beetle fire in oily puddles. Jaime returned escorted by 2 companies of gold cloaks, who claimed allegiance to Queen Sansa. With him rode Sansa herself, face calm, hair bound in a braid of stark red, atop a white palfrey. She crossed the field to Jon, dismounted stiffly, and embraced him, murmuring just loud enough for Daenerys to hear. She has less than 200 men within the Red Keep and no wildfire discovered. Samwell's agents checked. Qyburn fled by secret passage when the Golden Company sealed the gates behind him. Cersei sits alone in the throne room, drinking Arbor Gold. The lioness cornered, Jon said. Sansa straightened. Cornered animals lash out, but her claws dull. Tyrion joined them, eyes shining wet. Jaime says she asked only one thing, that I come speak with her. Alone. Heir. Jon exchanged a glance with Daenerys. Will you? I must. If she surrenders, we end this without burning half our city. He drew a steadying breath. If I do not walk back out, you will know her answer. Daenerys touched his sleeve, tenderness and warning in one gesture. If you fall, my mercy ends. I know. Tyrion bowed. May we never test what mercy means. Within the Red Keep's great hall, every torch guttered low. Dust powdered the Iron Throne, rats nested beneath cracked flagstones. Cersei sat crooked at the foot of the throne, goblet dangling, armor half buckled over a mourning gown that had once been silk. Her hair, grown back to chin length, stuck in ragged clumps to sweat-slick cheeks. She rose when Tyrion entered, steadied herself on the lion's head armrest. So the half-man comes to measure my coffin. Tyrion removed his gloves. I buried Tommen and Myrcella with heavier hearts than you will ever imagine. I prefer to bury no one else tonight. Then kneel. She brandished an empty goblet as if it were a dagger. Swear fealty. Bring your wolves and dragons into my house, and lap milk from my dish, like well-trained pets. You have no dish. Only ash. Tyrion looked to the throne. Once you told me you deserved Joffrey more than I did. You were wrong. We both deserved better than him, and better than the father who shaped him. Cersei's laugh cracked like ice in a basin. Do not speak of father. I must, because Jon Snow ends wars by showing men who they are beneath armor. Father raised us to believe love is weakness, but love conquered the dead while fear cowered behind castle walls. She hurled the goblet. It clanged across iron blades, rolled to Tyrion's feet. Wine trickled dark as blood. Spare me sermons. You come for my surrender. Here it is. She spread her arms. Take my crown, my life, my corpse, but you will never take my children again. Tyrion bent, picked up the goblet. Your children are dead, Cersei. All save the one you carry. Her eyes widened, hand straying to her belly. How? Rumor. Ravens, Qyburn's abandoned ledgers. He purchased tansy, pennyroyal, nightshade. You could not bring yourself to drink them. Your heart is not the stone you pretend. Cersei's throat worked. Tears welled. Tyrion stepped closer, gentle as a maester. Let the babe live. Let King's Landing live. Come with me now, walk out before the city. Bow your head. You will not die. You will live to raise this child under the watch of those who will never let it become another Joffrey. Her shoulders shook. They will call me monster. Children do not heed whispers. They heed arms that hold them. Be a mother, not a queen. Minutes passed, long enough that torches hissed down to embers. At last, Cersei wiped her face, leaving smears of wine and salt across her cheeks. She nodded once. "Very well, little brother. Help me stand." At dawn, the armies ringed the city saw twin figures emerge from the Red Keep, flanked by a thin column of Lannister men carrying banners of surrender. A lion, its claws bound in white ribbon. Tyrion walked aside Cersei, one hand beneath her elbow. Behind them followed Jaime, dressed now in the newly stitched white cloak of a king's guard. Cersei approached Jon and Daenerys with her head bowed and knelt, unsteadily, but without faltering. "I name Aegon Targaryen and Daenerys Stormborn, rightful rulers of the Seven Kingdoms," she said. "I lay down crown and claim, asking mercy for my unborn child." Silence churned the air, thick with stunned disbelief. Then Jon spoke, blade sheathed. "Rise and rise free of chains. You will sail at once for Oldtown to stand trial under faith and crown. Should the Seven spare you, you will live under guard for the length of your days, safe and silent." Cersei met his eyes, searching for mockery. She found only weariness. She rose. "I accept." A breath seemed to leave the entire city. From the walls no arrows flew. From the streets came a cautious cheer that rose to a roar when Drogon soared overhead, wings catching sunrise. Jon turned to Daenerys. "The throne is yours." She shook her head. "Ours. The dragon needs the wolf." She raised her voice to carry across the field. "Lords of Westeros, choose freely. Keep your crowns beneath my wings, or cast them aside. No realm built on fear will stand another winter." Flags dipped. The sunflowers of the Reach, the trident of the Riverlands, the kraken of the Iron Islands. Even the Golden Company lowered their elephant standards. Gold cloaks knelt next to barefoot smallfolk gawking from half-shuttered gates. In that moment the realm changed course like a ship catching a new tide. What came next would test every timber. Treaties to sign, fields to seed, wounds to bind. Yet for one heartbeat, possibility breathed, as warm as summer. They crowned Jon and Daenerys beneath the heart tree of Winterfell 1 month later, when spring melt sent rivulets singing beneath the snowpack. Bran officiated, eyes clear, hands resting on wolf-carved arms of his chair. Ghost and Nymeria, called from the woods by Arya's whistle, howled in eerie duet as Robb placed a circlet of pale weirwood around Jon's brow, and Sansa set a matched one of hammered Valyrian steel seed upon Daenerys. Fire and ice, root and flame. The feast lasted 3 days. Wildlings danced with Northmen. Ironborn drank with Dornishmen. Dragons wheeled overhead, casting shadows that made children squeal and duck behind rain barrels, only to peer out laughing. Sansa sat with Tyrion, drafting charters for a realm that would henceforth elect a king when need arose, Stark and Targaryen merely first among equals. Arya slipped away the second night on a sleek black ship, bound west of the sunset, chasing maps even Bran could not see. Gendry kissed her once on the dock, swore to keep her seat warm in Storm's End. Bran took Samwell's hand, announcing he had no wish to rule but every wish to guide. Jaime laid his white cloak at Bran's feet, pledging the new Kingsguard to defend the realm of living memory rather than any singular crown. Brienne stood beside him, her cloak the first dyed stark gray, her oath etched onto a fresh page of the White Book, whose ink had barely dried. Cersei sailed under guard to Oldtown, where the High Septon, newly elected, neither sparrow nor swine-fat noble, listened to her confession inside the starry sept. When she emerged, she wore the gray robes of silent penitence, lips stitched by vow. Some said she smiled behind the veil, content to let words die in favor of love that could yet bloom. In King's Landing, the throne room remained empty. Where the Iron Throne had twisted upward in obscene steel, now grew a living weirwood sapling transplanted from the god's wood of dragonstone, red leaves unfurling like pages of history rewritten. The small council chamber reopened windows long shuttered, letting sunlight pour upon maps where no border was drawn in blood. Years later, when the snows melted to reveal grass greener than any born in remembered summers, a traveler might stand upon a hill above Winterfell and see children racing direwolf pups through fields where dragon glass still gleamed beneath moss. He might see a queen teaching archery to girls who shouted that they would never need a king to protect them. He might see a king kneeling before his people, planting seedlings in the ashes of war. And if that traveler listened on nights when the sky burned with the ghosts of auroras, he might hear the old gods whispering through the leaves of the heart tree. A promise kept can outlive any winter. A dragon and a wolf, bound by blood and choice, can mend what fire and frost once sundered. So long as men remember the price of forgetting, spring will always return. And the traveler would believe, because the night air would smell not of iron or fear, but of sap and thaw, signs that even stories forged in sorrow can grow, given time, into living green. Mist clung to the black water long after sunrise, refusing to yield its secrets to the waking city. Jon watched barges slide through the white veil, loads of granite from the Vale, cedar from the summer isles, barrels of reach grain lashed beneath canvas against furtive rain. 3 years of peace had changed King's Landing more than a generation of war once did. Scaffolds latticed the broken domes of the Sept of Baelor. Foreign masons sang in tongues half the city now mimicked. And along the renovated quays children chased gulls instead of rats. What none of them could see, what even Jon struggled to name, was the tremor beneath the cobblestones, like a sleeping giant stirring at intervals too slow for any single heartbeat to mark. A gull settled on the parapet beside him and cocked its head, curious. Jon pinched a crumble of bread from his pocket, left from the dawn meal he had shared with the watchman atop the Red Keep, and offered it absent thought. The gull snapped the crust, took wing, and vanished into mist. He found himself wishing problems might be fed and sent flying so easily. Footsteps approached. Samwell halted an arm's length away, robes of the hand cinched over girth that palace cooks had only fattened. In his hands lay a leather folio stained with sea salt prints. "Raven from Oldtown," Sam said, voice pitched low, though no one else stood near. "Archmaester Ibroz confirms the child draws breath." Jon rested forearms on the stone. "And the mother?" "Cersei keeps her vows of silence. She writes pages of it, but never speaks. The lead brother of the Quiet Isle serves as confessor. Ibroz claims her quill is flint on steel." Sam opened the folio. "The babe is a girl. They call her Tiana. Brown eyes, golden fuzz beginning to curl. A lion cub born among books." Jon managed a brittle smile. Every raven brings news of looming debt or looming storm, and Oldtown sends babes wait in swaddling reports. Sam shut the folio with gentle finality. "Children are news worth heeding. The faith already petitions for fosterage here. Under the crown's careful eye, of course. They promise mercy, guidance, penance. A fresh start, they say. And when the girl grows, some zealot will call her the last true heir and rally swords behind cradle bars." Jon straightened, wind tugging at the sable ribbons woven into his half-cloak. "No, she stays where she is, safe among stone and scholars until she chooses her own road." Daenerys banter. In the distance, a horn sounded 3 descending notes. Sam turned, heartened. That will be Yara's fleet, the last of the northern pine for the royal yard. And her answer? "A to every term," Sam replied. The Iron Islands acknowledged the charter. Seats on the council, the taxes, all but the ban on reaving beyond the sunset. She asks instead to focus raids east, on Volantine slavers who've taken Euron's coin. Volantis. Jon sighed. If the Triarchs truly harbor him, war follows water. He paced the parapet, eyes narrowing on the emerging masts. Gray krakens flanking golden roses and Dornish suns. Strange tapestry, he thought, that blood and frost and fire had woven. Sam hesitated. There's more. Reports of ships sighted far out on the sunset sea. Black hulls, no banners, making east by north. Fisherfolk swear they saw wolves painted on the prows. Jon's breath caught. Wolves? A ship named Needle, perhaps. Sam's smile wobbled. Or a sailor's fancy. Send word to every tower between Fair Isle and the Arbor. Tell them to watch the horizon. If Arya returns, we greet her with open harbors, not quarrels. He clapped Sam's shoulder. "And thank you, old friend." Sam nodded, relief and fear mingling in his round face. "Council meets at midday. Don't be late, Your Grace." When he had gone, Jon stayed a moment longer, letting the cool air scour thoughts like a whetstone strips burr from steel. Below, cranes swung, unloading timber. Beyond, the city beat its tangled pulse. Not so different from the wall's hush before dawn patrols, he mused. Only here the darkness crept in crowds and coins, rather than snow and silence. He turned at last, and made for the tower stairs. The council chamber smelled of parchment, wax and Dornish wine breathing faintly inside stoppered jars. Light knifed through the tall windows, etching long bars across the table where lords sat elbow to elbow, with free folk chiefs and Dothraki khals, laboring to keep still on cushioned benches. Brienne, resplendent in Kingsguard white, stood behind the king's chair, helm tucked beneath one arm. Opposite her loomed Tormund in sealskin, twisting bright crab-apple beads through his beard while Davos muttered the meeting's order beside him. Tyrion lounged with quill poised, recording minutes and mischief in equal measure. Dany's place beside Jon remained empty for the moment. She was, he knew, walking the rookery with Rhaegal circling overhead, counting newly laid eggs Garrick the dragon ward swore he'd glimpsed at dawn. Jon seated himself and rapped knuckles upon oak. The murmurs ebbed. "First," he said, "Lord Davos brings word from the stepstones." Davos rose, rolling his shoulders like a sailor shrugging into a squall. "Stormbreak outpost reports black sails massing round Bloodstone. Numbers unknown. Fog thick, spyglasses thin. But survivors from a Braavosi trader claim Euron boards every ship that strays within a league, hacking crew to bits unless they swear to the Kraken and Bones flag. And he's not alone. Volunteering galleys escort him south by east." A rumble threaded the benches, outrage from some, unease from many. Tyrion tapped parchment. "Triarch Malakoi's envoy swore neutrality last autumn." "Envoys swear on silk," Davos said, "while captains swear on iron." Jon folded his hands. "If Volantis backs Euron, we face more than piracy. A fleet large enough could choke the gullet, starve half the realm. We can't fight slavers and build grain routes at once." "Let us burn their fleets before they finish mooring," suggested Grey Worm from where he stood, shadow still behind the unsullied scribes. His dark eyes flickered. "A swift strike with dragons ends blockade before it begins." Not the first time such counsel had been offered. Jon waited anew. "A swift strike invites wider fire. The free cities remember dragons burning Kuhor fields. They'll unite rather than scatter." He glanced at Brienne, who stiffened in silent concurrence. Tormund thumped the table. "Let the free cities gather. More foes, more stories. And more corpses," Brienne answered evenly. Before argument could soured further, the western doors parted. Daenerys swept in, cloak of deep indigo trailing. Her cheeks glowed, eyes alive with a fierce private joy. Jon's brow lifted a question. She gave half a nod, confirmation of eggs then. She took her seat. "Your Grace," Tyrion said, "we discuss slavers courting Euron?" Daenerys accepted a rolled parchment from Missandei and skimmed its contents. "If the Triarchs dare shelter him, we answer where it hurts worst. Coin. Essos runs on spice and silk. Halt our own trade. Ransom wagon loads of Volantine sugar waiting in Duskendale, and watch their merchant princes howl." Tyrion's quill scratched. "An embargo then. Yaras Krakens can enforce northbound lanes while Tyrell galleys sweep south." "Deniso, Dendishast." Sam cleared his throat. "Embargoes starve the innocent before the guilty. Volantis is home to thousands of freedmen who praise Daenerys Stormborn's name. We cannot repay loyalty with empty bellies." Arguments bloomed. Logistics, morality, fear, pride. Jon listened, dredging through words for a path, neither lined with fire nor weakness. At last Bran's voice, soft as quills on vellum, pierced the din. "The Triarchs moved their fleets to Bloodstone, yes, but not to aid Euron alone. They ferry cages of dark glass taken from Valyrian ruin. Qyburn hunts with them. He seeks horn and torch to bind dragons. Benediction. Silence fell. Even the Dothraki stilled, eyes widening. Bran's gaze had glazed with that distant sheen counselors learned to fear. He saw as ravens see, cold, absolute. Tyrion exhaled. Sailors speak of a dragon horn unearthed years ago, lost amid the smoking sea. And found, Bran intoned. It rests on a deck slick with blood, waiting. Dany's hands clenched the parchment hard enough to crease it. We strike now. Jon shook his head. Not yet. We need certainty. Where, when, how many? Bran? Can you see the fleet's course? None. The boy lord blinked, pupils dilating. Sweat beaded at his hairline. East and south, rounding the arbor toward Old Town. Euron means to snatch the babe, anchor her claim to cudgel the realm. A chill spidered through Jon's gut. Cersei's child, Tiana, was bait and key all at once. Sam's voice cracked. Old Town's port is weeks away from full defenses. The Hightowers rebuild the signal pyres, but then we sail within the hour, Jon said, rising. Cloak snapped behind him. Grey Worm, ready 4,000 unsullied for shipboard. Tormund choose 500 spearwives who know ropes better than hulls. Yara commands the van. Davos charts the shoals. Bran, watch every wave for us. Dany stood beside him. Regal and Viserion fly with Drogon. We burn their masts to cinders before they near Hightower. And what of King's Landing? Brienne asked. Stripped of dragons, the city lies tempting to every plotter. Sansa guards the capital, Jon replied. I trust my sister with my throne and my life. The meeting broke like ice struck by hammer. Map scrolls gathered, quills capped, lords bowing hurried farewells. Only Tyrion lingered, pen hovering above his ledger. Some will call this folly, he remarked softly. Leaving hearth to chase ghosts at sea. If the horn is myth, then we douse the myth in salt and come home, Jon said. But if it's real, we can't chance delay. Tyrion's nod was slow, grave. I'll ready the treasury for grain subsidy. War on water breeds lean land. Do it. Jon touched the dwarf's shoulder with friendly weight. And write, Sansa, Dottie. Tell her we sail for Old Town before moonrise. In Grow. South wind drove their ships hard, swelling canvas till seams groaned. Lightning spidered distant clouds, but the royal fleet rode just ahead of Stormline, masts etched white by moonwash. Yara's flagship Iron Victory led, hull scarred from raids yet proud. Behind her streamed Dromons of Tyrell Emerald and Martell Orange, then the sleek pale decks of Nymeria's Song bearing Bran's makeshift seat tethered to mast for smoothest pitch. Jon stood at the prow of Direwolf, face kissed by spray, as city lights dwindled astern. Dany joined him minutes later, hair unbound in salt breeze. Are you frightened? She asked. Always, he admitted. Good. Only fools sail fearless. She drew a breath. I felt Drogon shudder when Bran spoke of the horn, as if an echo touched him. Qyburn toyed with necromancy before. Gregor Clegane's ruin. He'd butcher half the world to claim a dragon, and burn the other half to keep it, Dany said. Jon watched starlight ripple on dark crests. If the horn exists, it won't merely bind. Legends say it kills the blower. Monsters never fear the cost to others, he murmured. Below, chainmail jingled, Arya slipping from shadow, short cloak soaked. Jon's heart leapt. He grasped her by the shoulders, half disbelief, half fierce joy. Stow that look, she said, smirking. Told you I'd sail west, didn't promise I'd stay. Gods, you smell like whale oil. Jon laughed. How? Later. Her face sobered. I found more than sunsets. There's a land out there, Jon. Forests of silver timber, people who paint their faces with moon dye and ride elk big as Hodor. They call the world a wheel of ages, each turning on seeds of dragons. She swallowed seawater taste. They remembered Valyria's fall before we spoke a word. Dany listened, eyes narrowing. You bring warning. Arya nodded. They had a dream, a horn forged from screaming stone waking winged shadows. The dream always ends in smoke drifting east. Waves slapped hull, as though underscoring each grim syllable. Joan's fingers tightened on rail. "Then our course stands," he said. "East to break the dream before it wakes." 3 days later, a raven, black, bearded, exhausted, found Bran aloft on Nymeria's song, and whispered tidings that chilled even his green-sided calm. He summoned Jon by bell rope. "The fleet divides," Bran said, voice rasped raw from too many visions. "Half the Volantene galleys escort Euron round the Reach. The rest veer north toward Fair Isle, flaming banners of red lotus and black kraken. They strike 2 harbors at once." "Force us to split," Jon muttered. "Or choose," Bran replied. Jon paced the quarterdeck. "Old Town harbors Tiana in the Horn, but Fair Isle lacks walls. It will burn." Dany stepped from sun-washed ladder, Rhaegal's saddle creak still echoing overhead. "We strike the Serpent's Head at Old Town. Spare villages once the fangs break." "Daumsarkani." "No," said Arya behind her. She pulled a spray-dotted chart from belt. "Euron's longships outrun our Dromons. He'll raid Fair Isle and vanish before sails appear. People die, horn intact. Then we split," Jon decided. "Dragons south to Old Town, fast, lethal. Fleet north with Yara and me to shadow Euron." He saw disagreement flicker in Dany's eyes, not fear so much as protective rage. "3 dragons can crack any mast," he added softly. "I'll ride with dire wolves and Ironborn. Trust me." "Now?" She held his gaze a breath longer than lightning's flash, then looked skyward where Drogon's shape carved sunlight. "Very well," she said. "But come back, or I'll burn the sea itself." Wind howled across Fair Isle's chalk-white cliffs as the first black sails appeared, keels splitting foam like midnight knives. Jon's fleet, hugging eastern currents, lay hidden behind a finger of headland until the raiders committed to shore. Rand smashed harbor pilings, torchbearers leapt, shouting kraken oaths. But instead of screaming fisherfolk, they met shield walls painted with running wolves, spears of Karstark ash, and Yara Greyjoy bellowing, "For the living." Jon led charge from the surf, long claws streaming water and blood alike. Euron screamed split din, half laughter, half fury, as he swung a serrated axe nicked by salt. They clashed amid wreckage of burning skiffs. Jon felt the man's madness like heat, feral and exultant. There was no plan in his blows, only hunger. Yet each stroke came too close. Steel rang, sparks showered. Around them battle surged. Free folk seizing grapnels, Tyrell archers loosing flame arrows that turned sails to cinders. Euron locked axe against Jon's blade, breath reeking of myrrh and bile. "Your dragon butterfly flaps far away," he hissed. Leaving Little Wolf alone. Jon twisted, levering strength through hips, broke the lock. "I'm never alone." Ghost slammed from shattered ramp, fangs closing on Euron's calf. The pirate howled, staggered. Jon followed, pommel to jaw, then point angled low. But blood-slick boards betrayed footing. Euron rolled, kicking Ghost loose, vanished through smoke. Horn blasts, 2, then 3, sounded seaward. Jon turned to see a shape cresting waves. The Silence, Euron's flagship, her decks hung with flayed skins, prow sporting iron maw. Upon poop deck stood Qyburn, gaunt and grinning, clutching a long object swaddled in oily silk. "The Horn," Jon breathed. Iron Victory swung alongside Silence, Yara's crew hurling chains. Storm-thick clouds blotted sun. Wind gusted sulfur scent from shattered cargo. Jon barked orders, board and seize, but Qyburn raised the horn high, and even across roar of sea Jon felt a ripple inside his ribs, as if someone plucked a cord tied to soul. Qyburn planted mouth to horn. Sound did not issue. Instead, silence thickened, pressing eardrums until sailors screamed and clutched heads. Jon's vision blurred with purple sparks. Far above, a distant roar answered. One he prayed came from Rhaegal, not Drogon. Then a different cry, eagle fierce, cut the gloom. Arya launched from mast rigging of direwolf, rope tied to her waist. She arced over gap, spinning midair, and landed atop Qyburn. Needle flashed, Horn tumbled, bounced to rail. Before Qyburn could grasp, she kicked it into sea. His shriek, outraged, denied, ended when she drew dragonglass dagger across his throat. Silence pitched in more ways than one. Across water they heard dragon's arrival. Thunder of wings, scream of flame. Rhaegal burst from cloud and dived, emerald fire raking silence's mainsail. Canvas erupted. Mast collapsed, crushing Euron, who'd reached deck, astride chaos. Yara's men hauled lines, backing oars. Direwolf lurched clear as burning spars toppled. Jon met Arya's gaze across widening gap. Dotted it. She grinned feral, swung to rigging, and vanished amid spray. Ash rained as silence sank. Ghost howled triumph. Ironborn cheered, pounding shields. But Rhaegal's fire would not cease. The dragon circled once more, green blaze licking ruined hull, though target already drowned. Jon felt new unease. The roar held edge of pain. He scanned sky. No Viserion, no Drogon. Rhaegal alone, flapping heavier than should. Then he saw a black dart lodged in joint of left wing, glimmering faint runes. Crossbow bolt of black glass. Archers! Yara shouted. On cliffs, raiders yet living had turned scorpions inland. Jon's heart lurched. Shields up, signaled Daenerys. But Daenerys was leagues south. He could only watch as Rhaegal, wounded, wobbled, lost height, and crashed beyond headland, with a thunder like worlds colliding. The sea hissed where fire met foam. 2 days of brutal rowing carried Jon's battered fleet to Old Town Harbor, where dragons fought a very different battle. Viserion and Drogon traced circles above Hightower's beacon, incinerating galley after galley, while unsullied ballistae thundered from pier. The Triarch's flags burned, captains begged quarter, slavers leapt into water and floated face down. Daenerys herself, astride Drogon, dove through smoke to rend Volantene flagship in twain, then hovered over quay where Qyburn's second horn, Cruder, had been set upon plinth. One gout of fire and artifact, melted to slag. When Jon stepped onto cracked quayside, soaked to bone and soul, she was already there, boots black with ash. Relief flashed across her face, fell away when she saw his gaze. Rhaegal, she whispered. Wounded, wing pierced. He swallowed ocean salt, thick with dread. Alive, I pray. He fell north of Fair Isle, will navigate by dawn. She drew breath ragged as torn silk, jaw clenched. We leave at once. Sam approached, eyes reddened with exhaustion. Old Town saved, sirs. Tyanna safe in Tower Vault. But Maester's fear plague among captured crews. We must quarantine. Jon clasped his friend's arm. Do what you must, T. A horn blew from watch rampart, warning. Above, Viserion shrieked in abrupt pain. Feathers of dark smoke guttered from his hide where orange alchemical fire splashed. Jon spun. A last Volantene trebuchet, hidden behind warehouse wall, launched clay casks, shattering into pools of living flame. Drogon barreled to shield brother, wings smashing gale force wind. Daenerys stood trembling, own skin alight with reflected orange. Jon seized her hand. Plague or pirates, she whispered, eyes never leaving sky. The world keeps inventing ways to kill what little I love. Jon pulled her close. Then we keep inventing ways to live. They reached Fair Isle, beneath dawn-stained bruise purple. Rhaegal lay on shingle beach, wing tattered but bones intact. Tyrion's healers sewed membrane, while Dany crooned Valyrian lullabies. Drogon coiled sentinel like Black Mountain Dada. The realm's fleet anchored in half-moon beyond breakers, flags limp in windless hush after storm. Yara approached Jon as he watched seamstress healers stitch dragonflesh. She bore Euron's axe, but half-snapped, edge blunted. For your haul, she said, thumping it into sand. Reaper's done. Jon met her eyes. And yours, Captain. The islands stand free of his shadow. She scrubbed salt from nose. Shadows return when lamps go out. Keep yours burning. Late that night Bran rolled to water's edge. stared at distant horizon where sun had died hours earlier. "The horn is lost," he said, "but one shard sank near Fissure Vent that bleeds hot from Earth's heart. Fire and water will stew spells into poison." Jon settled beside him, chin on fists. "Will poison reach us?" "Perhaps," Bran said. "But not tonight." They listened to surf thumpstones. Overhead, stars scattered like powdered diamond across vault of black. "Arya tells me of lands beyond," Bran murmured. "Wheel of ages, seeds of dragons. If wheel turns, another dark will rise." Jon considered the night. "We broke one spoke, we'll break the next." Bran's smile was wistful. "Not all spokes are forged for breaking. Some you mend, some you ride." Jon followed his gaze upward, where, far above even the circling dragons, a falling star sketched silver arc westward, direction of Arya's journeyed shores. New age, perhaps, written in sky. He rose. "Tomorrow we sail to King's Landing. The realm needs mending as much as dragons do." "Yee. And menders need rest," Bran said. Jon laughed quietly, linked arms beneath the boy's elbows, and pushed chair through soft sand toward campfire gleam. King's Landing greeted them with banners stitched of field flowers, direwolf entwined with three-headed dragon, underlined by hands clasped in union. Crowds thronged river roads, tossing petals. Jon saw wonder in their eyes, fear dimmed but not gone, like animals uncertain if thunder has passed for good. Sansa met them at the city gate, crown of woven olive branches upon auburn hair, her smile tempered by weight. "The Volantine emissaries sue for truce," she said after warm embraces. "They claim Triarch Malaquo never sanctioned Qyburn's plot, that Euron deceived them." Tyrion snorted. "Ay, and the wall was a garden fence." Jon squeezed Sansa's shoulder. "We'll hear them, extract coin for grain they withheld, and hostages for pledge." Sansa's glance flickered to Daenerys guiding Rhaegal's flight-weary bulk into courtyard, under Maester Torchlight. "Dragons heal, but slowly," she observed. "Everything worth saving does," Jon said. That night, small council reconvened. Jon dictated decree that Volantis pay reparation in ships fit for peace, hospital vessels, and grain barges. That Tyenna Lannister Targaryen remain ward of Old Town until 16th name day. That Iron Islands patrol stepstones under charter. That free folk granted tracts north of Last River grow barley. For realm, that every child born henceforth, noble or base, learn letters by 10th year, or their lord pay tax triple. Sam penned each line with pride. Tyrion affixed seal. Missandei read translations in Low Valyrian for Dothraki envoys, in Summer tongue for Summer Islanders. Brienne posted copies on keep gates at dawn. When tasks were done, Jon walked candlelit corridor to nursery, where Dany watched over bronze shell cupped in velvet, fresh egg, mottled with crimson swirls. She did not turn as he entered, but he felt her smile. "One more life," she whispered. "More than one," he corrected gently, brushing knuckles against her belly. She had told him during Voyage's lonely dawn, life quickening inside. Their child. Dany set the egg back in its cradle and faced him, eyes bright. "I fear for worlds they'll inherit. Then we shape it." He drew her close. Wheel mended, ridden, or shattered if need be. Outside the window, the sky paled with first blush of morning. Jon kissed her forehead, tasting salt left by tears neither of them had shed. Somewhere beyond the bay, bells began to ring, slow at first, then joyous, pealing across rooftops still damp with dew, carrying promise into streets and hearts, and every corner that had once known only fire and frost. Wind off the narrow sea carried the smell of warm salt and fresh-cut cedar through the half-finished arches of the dragon pit, now reborn as the great people's hall. Beneath its soaring rib vault of new white limestone, scaffolds rose like timber forests, and the clank of chisels rang in counterpoint to gull cries from the harbor. Workers from every kingdom scrambled over the masonry. Summer Islanders balanced on beams barefoot, Northmen in sleeveless jerkins, swung mallets with snow-pale arms, and Dothraki painted zigzags in red ochre across marble blocks before hauling them into place. No one shouted orders. Brass gongs fixed to ladders spoke the day's rhythm. 1 beat for lift, 2 for lower, 3 in urgent stutter for help. The system had begun as a joke among unsullied supervisors, and spread until even maesters used it. Jon watched from the wide terrace that would someday hold terraces of green, trying to imagine the hall finished. The new dome would stand open to the sky, giant ribs traced in Valyrian steel taken from Blackfire's melted hilt. Sunlight would spear down on assemblies drawn from guilds and villages, freeborn voices echoing where once dragons had groaned in chains. A man could almost believe that old griefs lay buried under these stones. Yet he knew how thin the mortar of peace could be, how fast it cracked when frost returned. A rasp of boots on gravel drew his eye. Brienne climbed the stair, helm tucked beneath arm, Kingsguard cloak trailing immaculate white despite dust hanging in sunbeams. At her side strode Ser Adam Velaryon, newly confirmed Lord Admiral of the Royal Fleet, dark curls flecked with mortar residue, sleeves rolled to elbows. They reached Jon together and saluted. "Work ahead of schedule," Adam reported. "Main ribs set by harvest. The glassmakers swear they'll finish the upper oculus come midwinter." Brienne's blue gaze lingered on opposite arch, where a rope dancer's foot slipped, recovered, and kept balanced. "No deaths today. 7 blessed continues." Jon nodded, though worry tugged at him. Accidents come when men grow confident. Double night lanterns, and add a gong for loose stone. Adam dipped his head, already turning to relay the order. Brienne stayed. "Grey Worm sends word. Border garrisons intercept smugglers near the stepstones. Volantini, yes, but also Bravos." "Bravos." Jon frowned. "The Sea Lord guaranteed neutrality." Coin speaks louder. Brienne glanced skyward. "We could station ships in the stepstones permanently, or open negotiations." Jon exhaled, feeling the weight of decisions yet unborn. "Tell Grey Worm to capture, not kill. We need witness." "Mercenaire." A shrill whistle echoed from the yard beyond the scaffolds, 3 notes sharp as flint. The workers froze. Jon's hand went to sword hilt. Though no enemy lurked, the whistle signaled royal approach. Moments later, Daenerys emerged from between stacks of quarried blocks, flanked by Missandei and 2 unsullied nurses cradling swaddled infants. The orphaned babes, from the Reach Plague Ward, now fostered under crown protection. The tiny figures wore capes cut from lavender wool. One fist punched air in sleep. Seeing Jon, Dany quickened her pace. He met her halfway down the terrace steps, the stone still warm from morning sun. She smelled of soaproot and milk, and the faint, unmistakable musk of dragon-scale oil she used each day on Rhaegal's scar. "Your sister has written," she said, offering a folded vellum. "News from the west." He slit the seal with thumb, scanning Arya's tight slanting hand. Moonelk herds, silver forests, a tribe calling themselves the Cathy. No threat, only curiosity. Yet between lines he sensed unease. Rumors that sky metals fell there, shards blacker than night and sharper than lies. Weapons for a war the Cathy refused to name. "She speaks of shadows moving beneath the aurora," he murmured. "Every horizon births its own night," Dany replied, eyes worried but steady. "Let us finish tending ours first." Jon brushed a thumb over the parchment, folded it again. "I'll send ravens to Pentos Mirkarth. Any known cartographers who'll chart beyond the sunset. We must know where Arya wanders." "Knowledge before steel," Dany agreed. She leaned closer, voice dropping. "Have you told the council about your dream?" He grimaced. "Not yet." The dream had come 3 nights running. A river of black water splitting the realm, swallowing villages until the capital wallowed like a barge. He'd seen flickers of pale fire across the flood, blue flames licking drowned towers. And in the center, the weirwood sapling planted where the Iron Throne once stood, its trunk cracked, bleeding sap dark as pitch. Dreams were no stranger. Skin-chill nightmares plagued half the kingdom. But Brynden Rivers, Bloodraven, had once told Bran that some dreams whistled like arrows across generations. Jon feared this arrow had found him. "Sam should read it," Dany said. Hell no, if chronicles speak of such waters. I will. Jon took her free hand, squeezing. After the coronation feast we'll carve an hour. An hour, she echoed, smile blooming. Just one? He chuckled, tension easing. Perhaps two. Nisande coughed politely behind them. Your graces, the children must take shade. They let hands slip apart. As Daenerys shepherded nurses toward the tents, Jon returned to the parapet. Far below, sunlight glimmered on the black water. The tide looked ordinary, sluggish, brown-green, but he found himself watching its flow as if seeking any hint of blacker whirl. The coronation feast for the People's Hall roof tree fell on the first day of the month of cranes, when white birds flocked north along the coast. Tens of thousands crammed the city streets, while lords and commons alike overflowed the half-finished hall. Food vendors ringed the square, Dornish peppers steaming beside northern hare pies, arbor wine sloshed into clay cups. Samwell Tarly recited the charter upon a dais shaped of dark oak, and cheers thundered high into the dome's skeleton. When Jon ascended the platform he wore no crown, only a circlet of plaited reeds fresh cut from the Blackwater, a tradition drawn from ancient marsh folk who named kings yearly by whoever tamed the flood. Daenerys stood at his side in a gown the color of first violets, her own circlet twin to his. Tyrion proclaimed them seed and sapling, a title the poets seized before ink dried. Speeches ebbed into music, dancers wove beneath torchlight, knights demonstrated quarterstaff bouts against Dothraki screamer displays. But between the bursts of applause Jon sensed undercurrents. Traders from Lys eyeing Taroshi rivals, Braavosi bankers murmuring with Westerosi guildsmen about taxes, a clutch of Vale knights stiff and silent after an overheard jest at Bronze Yon's expense. The kingdom's fractures still lay bare, only painted by festival's bright dusting. He drank little, spoke less, and before moonrise slipped out a side archway. Fresh mortar dust coated the stair to the upper ring. He followed it until noise dwindled. Stars stretched overhead in silver nets. Somewhere below, a trio of flutes began a melancholy refrain. A reacher dirged for seeds scattered before harvest. A footfall echoed. Sansa emerged from shadowed corridor, the blue fox of Houselock pinned at her bosom. She pressed cloak tighter against brisk wind. I heard you fled your own feast, she said, half-smile. Only for breath. Jon leaned on parapet. How fares the city without its wolf queen? She joined him. Content tonight. Nervous tomorrow? Her gaze dropped to the river. I've doubled grain stores inside the Heir warehouses, just in case. He frowned. In case of what? That dream you told me last winter, she answered quietly. The flood that ate streets. You fear it still. He exhaled, nodding. Laughable. I, who once faced dead kings, now dread dirty water. We survive by dreading what seems laughable. She rested gloves upon stone. Father was called cautious. Yet had others heeded him, half the tragedy of Robert's rebellion might have been spared. Then. Jon thought of Ned's calm counsel, soft words that hid unyielding iron. Ay. Sansa tilted head. Will you order seawalls raised? I consider. But walls lull folk into thinking they master nature. Then break the dams upriver. She shrugged at his start. Bran's idea. He believes the flood you dream springs from log jams piling north of Maidenpool, a tangle older than Egan's Landing. Dwarf maesters who once tended that valley wrote of black silt so rich a single spadeful tarnished steel. Then Jon pictured rotting trunks stacked like bones across a narrow gorge. Rain one season too strong, and the makeshift levee loosed. A black river indeed. I'll ride north within the week, he decided. Find the gorge, clear the jam. Sansa placed a hand on his arm. Take guards, and me. Politics corrodes my patience. An axe and honest mud will remind me of home. He grinned, sudden warmth chasing chill. Very well, sister. Pack, furs. Mitchum. Behind them, cheering swelled, as Dany released 3 lantern dragons wrought of silk, each bearing a wish scroll. They rode hot currents into darkness, tiny flickers drifting west, south, and north. Jon wondered what wish his wife had penned. Preparations spun quick. Tyrion drafted letters deputizing Lord Davos to chair council in the king's absence. Brienne assigned a double column of Kingsguard and Winterfell veterans. Bran, upon hearing of the journey, called for his ravens and flew ahead in spirit to scout road conditions, returning with warnings of fresh bandit camps flying no known banners. The day they meant to depart, dawn broke crimson. Jon woke early, stroked Dany's hair aside, and found her watching him with solemn eyes. "The Viserion circled the city all night," she whispered. He saw torches along the black water, too many for fishermen. Jon dressed, strapped Longclaw. Together they climbed the Rookery Tower. From there, flickers still dotted the southern bank, a ragged line snaking inland. Through a mirrorish lens he made out wagons draped in black and orange. "Volantane colors," he muttered. "Why march in darkness? They avoid toll gates." Dany's jaw tightened. "Slaver trains smuggle flesh beneath spice sacks." Jon lowered the glass. "We intercept before they cross Tumbleton. The river road lies near our course north." Outside the room, bells suddenly clanged alarm. 3 slow tolls, then a rapid 6. He stiffened. "That's the shipyard bell," Dany said. They descended 2 flights to landing overlooking the yard. Smoke coiled upward from the hull of a newly laid galley. Flames licked pitch seams. Sailors scurrying with buckets. Sabotage. And a message. Dany turned toward stables. "Mount Swiftwind. I'll take Drogon." By noon, Jon's company thundered west. 20 mounted Kingsguard, Sansa's 6 Northmen bannermen, Grey Worm with 100 unsullied, and behind rode Bran's carriage, armored sides reinforced with ribbed steel forged from Euron's salvaged axe. Missandei insisted on joining, quills and ledgers ready to document reparations when slavers were seized. Road dust rose around them, glinting gold in high sun. Viserion wheeled overhead on silent wings. Drogon and Rhaegal remained to guard the capital. Near evening they reached a low rise overlooking the road. Below crawled the column glimpsed at dawn. 50 wagons, each drawn by 4 mules, escorted by sellswards wearing half-helmets shaped like squid beaks. At their flanks trotted gaunt youths roped at neck, wrists bound, cargo for some clandestine market. Jon's fury flared hot, but he forced calm. "Grey Worm, take right flank. Ser Jaime," for the Lord Commander had insisted on leading despite golden prosthetic, "circle left with the Northmen. Hold arrows till they break." "Bye." Hooves thundered. Arrows sang. The ambush shattered the column like struck ice. Squid-helmed mercenaries fled into scrub. Unsullied advanced in shield wall silent as snowfall. Within minutes, ropes lay severed, captives freed. Amid the chaos, Jon dismounted before a gilded cage wagon. Behind its bars sat a woman in silk curiously unstained by travel. Braided gold chains circled her neck like tame serpents. Eyes of emerald studied him without fear. "I am Sakaro Jack," she said in liquid common tongue. "Factor for the 11th Bank of Volantis. Those men you slay served me." "Emu." Jon's grip on Longclaw tightened. "Your servants forced children at spear point." "Indentured," she corrected mildly. "Debts owed to the Triarch Malakor." Sansa rode up, eyes blazing. "We abolished debt chains last year." Volantis signed. Sakaro shrugged. "States sign, princes scheme." Grey Worm joined them, blade dark with blood. "She rides to Planky Town," he said, "to barter hostages for ships." Jon stared at the banker. "You played traitors against triarchs. Triarchs busy bleeding each other." Her smile never reached eyes. "Free commerce finds cracks." Behind them Missandei knelt by a liberated boy no more than 8, gently untying rope from blistered wrists. Rage stormed through Jon so fierce he feared his voice might break when he spoke. "You will face tribunal in King's Landing. Your cargo walks free. And your throne grows poorer," Sakaro warned, still serene. "Seize me, Volantis freezes your credit. Bravos follows. You'll beg coin to feed these wretches, and Braavos never forgives." Sansa wheeled her horse forward so abruptly its chest nudged the cage. "Braavos once funded a girl who toppled slavers with fire and blood. They care for coin, aye, but more for markets. If Westeros starves, Braavos earns nothing. You bluff with straw." Sakaro's mouth flickered. For first time, uncertainty crept. Jon gestured. "Take her, unharmed. We'll see what truth coin can purchase in open court." Grey Worm opened the cage, shackled the factor with silk replaced by iron. Unsullied led her away. Captives gathered near the wagons, half diverged across language, half united by relief. Among them Jon noticed a frail septon with sandaled feet raw to bone. When offered water he whispered thanks, and pressed a scrap of hide into Jon's palm. "Schedule of tithes owed by unnamed lords to finance this caravan." Jon scanned names. Petty knights, a few mayors, and at bottom, stylized sigil of a falcon stooping upon snake. He called Sansa. "The Vale?" She squinted. "Lord Belmore, perhaps, or covert Arryn faction." Behind them, Bran's carriage door opened. The boy's pale face emerged, eyes black with raven glimmer. "The falcon falls," he said softly. "Feathers drift across ice." Jon shivered despite heat. 2 mornings later, they camped beside a shallow ford, where Maidenpool's tributary met the Blackwater. While Unsullied established pickets, Jon walked riverbank with Sam, who had ridden from capital bearing fresh tidings. The Sea Lord of Braavos offered mediation, on condition that Westeros abandon all embargoes. "Stall," Jon said, skimming a pebble. "Until slaver trial ends." Sam nodded, adjusting spectacles fogged by damp. "On another matter, those flood dreams? I found scrolls in Summerhall ruins, penned by Aegon V's hydrologists. They warned of a coal dam upstream. Same gorge Bran described. Benendemstihar." Jon knelt, dipping hand into water. Current tugged steady but not alarming. Yet he could smell silt heavier than usual, a sour tang like rot. He stood. "We ride at first light." That night, thunder rolled west. Rain hammered tents. Bran summoned Jon inside his wagon. "The jam breaks even now," Bran whispered. Candlelight carved hollows under his eyes. "I flew above. Trees groan, waters rage. By dawn the wave will crest." Jon's pulse thudded. "Can we divert?" "A channel," Bran said. 3 cuts through left bank will flood low marsh instead of city." He unrolled a crude map scratched with charcoal. Jon traced lines. 3 narrow notches in hillside plateau. "How do we cut them in hours?" "Dragon glass," Bran replied. "A knife of fire." Dany arrived before sunrise, Drogon's wings scattering embers of dawn. She had felt Jon's urgency in their last whispered dream, 2 minds brushing like ravens crossing currents. Behind Drogon glided Rhaegal, wings stitched yet strong enough for slow flight. At the gorge the scene matched Bran's vision. Jagged dam of ancient trees wedged between shale walls, water hammering against it with roar like giants' drums. Each heartbeat sent spray geysering higher. Jon estimated scant hours before collapse. Workers set charges, dragonglass picks driven into bank, unsullied with mattocks under Grey Worm's terse commands. But soil proved stubborn clay over stone. Progress crawled while river rose. "Not fast enough," Jon muttered. Dany's voice, quiet. "Let me." He met her gaze. Steady, fearless. The hill might slump beneath flame. Better hill than city. She mounted Drogon. "Signal when your men stand clear." Grey Worm blew horn. Unsullied scrambled upslope. Drogon lifted, black silhouette against copper sky, muscles rippling beneath scarred scales. Jon watched Dany lean forward, whispering that word only dragons knew. Fire burst, deep orange shot with green, striking the hillside like the fist of a sun. Earth shuddered. A chunk of bank melted, glowing red. The flame traced downward in a sinuous path, carving channel wide as 20 wagons. Smoke choked air, but wind gust carried most south. Rhaegal followed, gentler flame widening, second cut. Minutes later, third channel opened under Viserion's ice-blue fire. Strange now, since an alchemist's salve had swallowed months before turned his breath pale sapphire. Jon felt chill from even this distance. The river found those scars with hungry glee. Brown water poured through cuts, hissing over molten rock. Within an hour, the level behind dam dropped a foot. Pressure eased, roar less strident. But wood already swollen for centuries gave way in its weakest seam. A crack, like grand bells, split morning. Dam chunks tore free, a black wall of water surged. Jon's gut turned cold. He saw Dany wheel Drogon above the wave, shouting unheard. Bran's voice called from carriage. The channel holds. Trust. The flood met first cut, slammed, foamed, and diverted, bulk shearing off into marshland beyond. Second and third cuts drew more volume. What spilled past waned until only a churning torrent roared down normal course, no taller than spring freshet. Jon exhaled so long his head swam. He found Sansa at his elbow. Face streaked soot, but smiling helplessly. "We broke your dream," she said. Or answered it. He grasped her soot-grimed hand. "Either way, the city lives." High overhead, Drogon bellowed triumph. Rhaegal answered with booming croak. Viserion wheeled slower, conserving strength. Dany guided them landward to perch on newly cooled ledge above ruined dam. From there she raised a fist, a simple salute. Jon returned it, heart full. Weeks later, back in King's Landing, trial of Sacharo Jack convened in the People's Hall. Roof now finished. Glass panes scattering rainbows across marble. Lords sat not on separate tiers, but along curved benches by province. Freedmen formed outer rings, ballots in hand, to vote on verdict, a system Sam had adapted from stories of the old Hiskari. Sacharo defended herself deftly, citing trade precedent, smuggling loopholes. Yet one by one freed captives testified. Broken teeth, stolen daughters, brands hidden beneath cloaks. When the last witness sat, silence weighed heavy as Valyrian steel. Then Bran rose from where he'd watched unmoving. "She saw futures in coin," he said, voice like leaves rustling. "But not the ghosts standing behind her. The children she bartered will walk the hall each year, reminding all who barter in flesh that the past attends every bargain." "Esidiun," he gestured. Guards brought forward scales hammered of the same black silt dredged from the floodplain. Into one pan they piled chains cut from prisoners, into the other, gold ingots bearing Volantine sigil. One after another, the gold outweighed chains. Bran kept adding until balance tipped. "The debt repaid," he pronounced. "The rest funds orphan houses. Sacharo Jack will serve there, teaching letters 3 days each week under watch. She stays until every child she sold can pen their own name." "Benjamin? How?" Gasps rippled. No death sentence, no exile. Yet a punishment harsher to one born a privilege. Jon saw Sacharo's throat bob, pride cracking. After verdict, Braavosi envoy announced the Sea Lord would guarantee loans for new wharves, provided Westeros continued dismantling slave routes. Tyrion quipped they'd accept, only if interest rates dropped like the Blackwater. Laughter broke tension, though Jon noted bankers took notes rapidly. Peace slowly rooted deeper. With flood threat past, Jon ordered laborers to shape marsh into rice paddies. Reacher farmers taught techniques learned from EIT traders. Grain yields tripled. The People's Hall hosted its first winter moot, electing representatives for 4-year terms. No blood spilled. A marvel, though not a miracle. Brienne kept guards visible at every session. As spring unfurled, Arya returned. Her ship Needle slid into harbor, painted with Kathi moon spirals. She brought gifts. Seeds of silver leaf trees, tails of ice mirrors, and a single shard of star metal no smith could scratch. At feast that night, she laid it before Bran. They say it falls only where worlds touch. Bran ran fingers along edge, eyes distant. He would study long. Banners of foreign envoys now fluttered beside Westerosi ones. Parash Edur of Enath Carthene 13th, even a shy envoy of red-haired shrikes from the bones. They came curious about People's Hall, about dragons willing to carry parley instead of flame. But threats lingered beyond horizon. Whispers of a shadow league in IB that brewed leviathans ridden by necromancers. Murders in Pentos, tracing sigils of a burning hand. Jon and Dany met each at council, weighing swords against plowshares. One eve, near the birth of their child, whom they agreed to name Lyanna Rhaenys. Should she draw breath, Jon climbed the tower alone. Below, streets glowed amber, lanterns reflecting in calm river. He found no black flood, only quiet, yet memory of roar remained. He thought of his father's words, the man who passes sentence should swing the sword. But what blade for centuries of hurt? He had swung many already. Steel, law, mercy. Some wounds healed, others festered unseen. Dany joined him, heavy with child. She set his hand on the small life kicking inside. "We learn as we lead," she said. "And lead as we learn." He kissed her brow, stare returning to river. Sansa said, "Surviving means dreading the laughable. What dread awaits our daughter? Fear makes room for courage." Her smile glowed. When she meets dread, she'll have more than fire or ice. She'll have story, a tale of flood diverted by many hands. Jon's throat tightened. Stars shimmered above, mirrored in water below. Sky and river, each a reflection of the other. For the moment, they seemed at peace. Long after Dany slept, he remained at the parapet, sentinel over a city that had been his enemy, his refuge, and now his charge. Bells tolled midnight. Somewhere an infant cried, then hushed. Tomorrow, new squabbles would erupt. Taxes, borders, ancient grudges. The wheel still turned, slower, but alive. Jon drew Longclaw, held it upright so moonlight ran the length of blade. In reflection he saw his face, weathered but unbroken, and behind his own ghost glimpsed a future. Not certain, never safe, yet wide and wild as the seas Arya had crossed. He sheathed the sword, breathing salt-tinged air, and descended to where warmth waited. That was enough for tonight, and tonight was seed for all the dawns yet to come.